And thank you all for being here today. My name is Devin Barrington Ward, and I'm a community organizer with the Black Futurist Group. Just for purposes of identification, I'm also a candidate for public office. But today I'm speaking not as a candidate, but as a concerned citizen, as an future where Black people can thrive, where we are free from the toxic legacy of corporate greed, environmental racism, and governmental neglect. And that future is being stolen from us right now by corporations like BioLab, owned by their parent company, Kick Consumer Products. We are here today because this disaster has once again reminded us that we do not have to live like this. This isn't just a Rockdale County problem. This has now become a Metro Atlanta problem, a Georgia problem, a problem that affects every single one of us. The toxic chemicals released from the fire at BioLab have poisoned our air, forced our families in Rockdale to have to shelter in place, and under no certain terms, when are we going to be safe to open up our windows or step back outside in the communities that have been affected? Why are we living like this? Because a corporation, in its pursuit of profit, has cut corners on safety, and our leaders have allowed it to happen. Our communities, predominantly Black, working class communities, are always the ones who are forced to shelter in place, while these corporations shelter behind legal loopholes and weak enforcement. State leaders love to boast about how Georgia is #1 as a place to do business in this country. But what does that mean when businesses of the day are poisoning the very people who live here? Are we really the best place to do business when the way that some businesses have conducted themselves result in toxic air, polluted water, and chronic illness among the people of Metro Atlanta? This is environmental racism, plain and simple. Time and time again, our communities that bear the brunt of these disasters, we have seen this with BioLab before. And yet we are here again, left to clean up their mess. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a system that values the profits over people and puts Black and brown communities on the front lines of environmental hazards. And it's past time that we put a stop to it. What makes this even more infuriating is that there has been a lack of regulatory oversight. The EPA and Georgia's Environmental Protection Division has left us in somewhat of a state of confusion. We have not received the clearest of answers about the true quality of the air that we are breathing. The monitoring has been inconsistent at times and inadequate. And if we can't even get real-time and transparent information from the agencies tasked with protecting us, then how are we supposed to trust that they are keeping us safe? But let's be clear. This is not a future that we have to accept. We don't have to live in a world where corporate greed outweighs the health and safety of our families. We don't have to live in a state where our leaders prioritize the interests of polluters over the well-being of our communities. We can and we must do better. We are here today to demand immediate and permanent action. That starts with the closure of BioLab, full accountability for their actions, and financial restitution for the communities who have been harmed. This also means putting in place real oversight to ensure that these corporations can no longer operate unchecked, and that those who pollute our communities face real consequences. I'm standing here today because I refuse to accept a future where incidents like this are the norm. As an Afrofuturist, as a father, as a leader in this community, as a human, I believe in a future where our people thrive, where we are free from the threats of environmental destruction, and where justice is the foundation of our society. A future where corporations like BioLab no longer are able to wreak havoc in our lives, and that's a future that's worth fighting for. Thank you all for being here today, and together we can keep fighting until we build a future where incidents like this no longer exist, because we cannot afford to accept anything less. Again, thank you all for joining this press conference today. Today you will hear from leaders from Rockdale County and across the metro region. You will also hear from environmental groups and residents who have been impacted directly by this incident. We want to be clear that our demand here today is that we close the facility and we permanently close it, because we have seen these incidents with this facility time and time again, and enough is enough. I believe we've been joined by our member of Congress, Hank Johnson, so I will now turn it over to Congressman Johnson.
Thank you, Representative. Thank everyone for being here. Thank you for the Black Futurist Group for convening us together for this press conference on this urgent matter that has occurred. It's been slowly unfolding since Sunday morning, when reports are that the Rockdale Fire Department was called to the scene of a fire on the roof of the BioLab facility, where they proceeded to extinguish the fire with water, and some of the water seeped into the building, where there are millions of pounds of chlorine and TCCA being warehoused in preparation for use on products that are being manufactured at the plant. And as a result of the exposure to small amounts of water from the roof, from the fire, there was a chemical reaction that has led to the noxious fumes of smoke. That's one scenario that we have heard about the cause of this. The other being a malfunctioning sprinkler inside the building. We've heard that. So we really don't know exactly how this thing started, other than the fact that there was water that met the chlorine and other chemicals in the building, which caused a chemical reaction, which has produced toxic plumes of smoke that have affected not just the people of Conyers and Rockdale County, but have affected people who live in the entire region. So it's in addition to being a local catastrophe, it has spread to become a regional catastrophe. And so the public health, safety, and well-being is at issue. The plant has a history of being non-compliant with state rules and regulations. It has been cited numerous times. There have been numerous fires. There have been at least 3 incidents over the last 12 months, 2 of which were not reported. In addition to that, 3 serious events over the last 7 years, and over the last 20 years, there have been 4 notable events that have occurred at this plant where public safety has been put at risk. Enough is enough. When that plant started operation back in 1973, Rockdale County was a rural area. Not too many people lived out there. But since 1973, the entire metropolitan region, including Conyers and Rockdale, has expanded in its population. People live there, elderly people, children, people with pre-existing conditions like asthma, COPD, other respiratory ailments, people whose hearts are weak, and that heart has to pump extra hard when there's respiratory distress, places more pressure on the heart. The heart has to act more vigorously. People's health is at risk as a result of these noxious fumes that continue to come from this plant. This fire, however it started on Sunday morning, is still smoldering and producing noxious fumes that are hurting people who live right there in the immediate facility, who can't afford to leave. Who among us can afford to leave their home suddenly and pay for a hotel room at a cost of $150, $200 a night, not including your food? Who among us is able to do that for a family of 5 or 6 people, house them in one room at a motel to escape danger? So you must shelter in place as advised, but you're sheltering in a place where the doors and windows are closed, the air conditioner is off, and it's 90 degrees inside the house, and the noxious fumes, you smell them. That's the condition that people in Rockdale County and Conyers are living in right now. That's why this situation has reached the point where it is a emergency. And so people need help from government. And so I'm calling on officials to declare a state of emergency so emergency relief funds can flow to the people of Rockdale County and any surrounding area that may need it. And with that, I'm going to now turn it back over. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Congressman Johnson. I'd now like to turn it over to the representatives who represent Rockdale County and the Conyers area, particularly the site where this incident has taken place. We'll hear from Representative Carter and then Representative Taylor in that order.
Good afternoon. I'm Doreen Carter. I'm the state representative for Georgia House District 93. Thank you, Barrington and your group, for convening everyone, and thank you, Congressman Johnson, for being here, because now we have our federal elected official speaking directly to our leadership that we must declare the area a state of emergency. What I want to express to each of you and those of you listening, the plant is in Rockdale, but it has affected the surrounding counties. I actually live in DeKalb in the city of Lithonia, and I could not sit in my dining room. So for us to continue to say Rockdale and it's not expressed in other areas, we've got to change the narrative. I reached out to the governor's office, and we are asking here today that the governor declares that East Metro area that includes East DeKalb, South Gwinnett, Newton County, Henry County, parts of Clayton County, and of course, Rockdale County, a state of emergency. Where we may have residents that are in their homes, we have got to provide resources that they can take care of themselves. We just finished coming through a hurricane. We know that we have emergency folk tending to them, and we know supplies are low. We must do everything that we can in the state of Georgia to ensure that the East Metro area surrounding Rockdale County is taken care of. And I will echo everyone here, and I believe we all stand in agreement, it is time for this chemical plant to be closed and closed permanently, never to be opened again. And they, yes, must pay restitution, but today, my constituents are asking, what are we going to do for them today? And that's what we're asking our governor today, to lead in the East Metro area, ensure that our residents get the resources that they need. Thank you.
Next, we'll hear from Chair State Representative Rhonda Taylor.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I am State Representative Rhonda Taylor. I'm the chair of the Rockdale delegation, and I come to you from Ground Zero. And as others have said, we're all in this together. It is regional, and the effects is constantly getting worse, if you ask me. I'm right there in Rockdale, and I had to turn my air on because it was suffocating in there. So we're living in conditions that we don't have to live in. And I join all the prior speakers in saying that it's time to do something, and we have to do it now. I'm hearing from my constituents who, as our congressman has said, cannot afford to go and stay in a hotel for 3 or 4 nights. We're being asked to shelter in from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I call it a makeshift shelter that we have there. But then with the COVID going around, it's too much. I've heard from several businesses who decided to just shut their doors for good and close because they can't. One business owner said, Rep. Taylor, and one day I lost $8,000. So I think it's time for us to come together, stand together, and demand together that action be taken and action be taken right away. We have a meeting with the leadership of Rockdale County tomorrow at 3 p.m. And at that time, I hope to be able to convince them that we have to collectively say no to biolabs. And I'm going to turn it over to, oh, you want to talk about the mask? We had the health department director that covers Rockdale, Gwinnett, and Newton County as part of one of the press conferences. And the question was, are we safe with the N95 mask? She said no, that I guess the molecules that are in the chlorine are so small that they can penetrate the N95 mask. So doing research, I think Representative Park Cannon for doing the research for us, this is the mask that they're recommending. It comes with a tank that is sold separately, and she found the mask online at Amazon for $40. I'm not sure the cost of the actual tank that goes with it. But can you imagine walking around in life with this on, looking like this? So again, let's just come together, demand from all across the state, specifically in those regions where it's been directly impacting, and let's say no to BioLab. Thank you.
We've been joined by State Senator Tanya Anderson, who also represents the area that has been impacted by this incident, so we'll hear remarks from her as well.
Good afternoon, everyone, and to my colleagues and all those who care about Georgia. We are here again to speak to the incident in Rockdale County. As many have said, we live close in the vicinity. I am less than 2 miles away from that plant. And I have seen 1, 2, and now 3 times. I have heard from citizens, and the state of Georgia is in a state of emergency. Because it is affecting the life, health, and safety of the residents of the state of Georgia, I decided today to bring a letter from the citizens of Rockdale. And it reads, "My family and countless others live in fear of our lives and health in Conyers, Georgia. Our homely community has become a hazardous wasteland due to the biolab situated around us. The fires, putting our lives and our beloved environment at health risks. Chemical fires, toxins into the air, affecting the quality of the air that we breathe, leading to numerous health issues like respiratory diseases and potentially deadly conditions like cancer. According to the CDC, those living in proximity to chemical fires are at a significant risk. Our environment is also threatened. The biolab's operations have disrupted and frustrated our local ecosystems, endangering our wildlife and local flora. According to the EPA, harmful emissions from these gases can cause several illnesses, especially respiratory issues, when these toxins are released into the environment. Shut down BioLab. Shut down BioLab.
Shut down BioLab. Shut down BioLab. Shut down BioLab. Shut down BioLab.
And now,
Shut down BioLab.
and now the question is to the state EPD. How many inspections have been done? We need to hold their feet to the fire, release the numbers. EPD, where is your accountability to the citizens of Georgia? Governor Kemp, hold the EPD accountable. When was the last time an inspection was done? And since they've gone through this 1, 2, and 3 times, what was the fine? What are the consequences? Apparently not strong enough because they keep wanting to come back. We have to take a stand and say that if you're not going to be good stewards, you can be good corporate partners, but if you're not good stewards, then the health and safety of the citizens of the area of I-20 East and the state of Georgia and I-20 West downtown Atlanta, it's all the way in Atlanta, it's in Gwinnett County. It is not okay. It is not okay. So we say, since you're not going to be good stewards of the environment, take your hat, your coat, and leave.
We will now hear from Daniel Blackman, who serves as a representative of the Georgia Conservation Voters and is the former EPA Regional Administrator for Region 4.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Again, my name is Daniel Blackman. I want to thank each person that's been able to contribute today. As it was stated, I'm the former Regional Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency. I was appointed by President Biden in 2021. I served up until this year, and as a concerned citizen that lives outside of Rockdale County, I want to first echo everything that was said. Georgia, over the last few weeks, have experienced extreme weather conditions. Our heart goes out to people around this state, but as we know, that as weather patterns change and as we've seen these plumes, as someone that was responsible for mitigating these types of situations and creating disaster management plans, I'm very concerned. Congressman Johnson was very clear as with everyone else that has spoken about shutting biolabs down. I don't want to go back into the fact that, yes, there's been over 3 violations at a very significant standpoint over the last 7 years, 3 of which 4 in 20 years, as Congressman Johnson mentioned. I want to explain 2 things really quickly. One, how this operation is supposed to mitigate, because my dear friend Senator Anderson just mentioned EPD. And EPA, as you all know, on the federal side is responsible at this point with Incident Command to test the air. The air directors as well as the water directors have, to my understanding, been deployed to work with the on-site coordinator that is appointed by the EPD, and that individual has been tasked to coordinate it with the Department of Public Health, the EPA, GEMA, Homeland Security, but also Rockdale Emergency Management. My biggest concern is the lack of transparency, data, and information that's shared. As we see a public health crisis that is impacting not just the citizens of Conyers and Rockdale, but of surrounding counties, we should all be concerned. When the pandemic hit the United States in 2020, one of the reasons why marginalized communities were so impacted, specifically black and brown communities, was because of pre-existing respiratory illness. And it is no mistake that pre-existing respiratory illness is not a result of the pandemic, nor is it a result of one isolated incident, but environmental racism and challenges over the past 50 to 100 years, where landfills have consistently been within 68% of black communities are within 30-mile proximity of a landfill. When you look at how these facilities are, not one of them has ever been in Buckhead, not one of them has ever been in more of our affluent communities. So the public health, safety, and well-being of these communities has to be prioritized. My concern is for the senior citizens in these areas, the children around Rockdale, DeKalb, South Gwinnett. I'm hearing stories from Henry County and from Clayton County. These children's lungs, as they develop, must be safeguarded and protected. As it was mentioned by Congressman Johnson about the multiple chemicals, this facility, BioLab, used chemicals to basically deal with erosion in pools. The chlorine and the mixture, from a conversation we had with Director of Atmospheric Sciences from Georgia Tech, explained the severity of how this was, but also now finding other chemicals such as ammonia that potentially has come out of this. So number one, we need to have more within the General Assembly. I'm calling, especially with those of us who stand here in solidarity, for more bad actor legislation to be passed to not only remove BioLab from Conyers, but to make sure that we no longer slap these companies that make billions of dollars off of taxpayers on the wrist. We have to find them in a way that should also accompany criminal charges. And as soon as an investigation begins, I know that Congressman Johnson will work very diligently to make sure that those areas are addressed. But there will be several investigations going on, and rest assured that in the next couple of weeks, we hope to support initiatives where the community, people that are working right now that cannot afford to shelter in place because they've got to keep their lights on, they've got to feed their families, they depend on public transportation every day, and we're expecting individuals to shelter in place under uncertain conditions. And when you have GEMA and Homeland Security that make statements such as most people, who are most people? We don't know how to differentiate in these situations if the organizations, state and federal, are organizing. We need clear and direct instructions. We need transparency. We need accountability. But more importantly, we need our communities, our first responders, and all those who are in the direct line and path of public health concerns to be addressed. And then lastly, I want to thank everyone that's here today, but I think it's really important for us to know what the path forward is. I would recommend to everyone that is sheltering in place, please do not run your air conditioning units in the home. I know that could be a very big inconvenience for those who have maybe outdoor gardens. I mean, we need to take everything into consideration as to what is happening. If you have any physical challenges such as irritation, if you have any pre-existing pulmonary disease or problems, document everything, keep your receipts, see your physicians, make sure you're keeping a journal. And if you're driving in your vehicle, circulate your air internal and not to get the air from outside until the data, the information, and everything that we're giving is not only traced, but is compliant across the board. And biolabs, again, companies like this have no place in our communities, especially where there's no accountability. So again, we're calling for biolab to close, but also for it to not be in any other neighborhood or community, not just in Georgia, but around the United States. Thank you.
Just as an important note, this has become a major incident. Over 700 people have called the Georgia Poison Center, identifying that they've had some sort of symptom that they believe is related to this incident. People are regularly stating that they are experiencing a burning sensation in their chest and in their throat. Their eyes are burning. People who have pre-existing conditions are experiencing some of the worst aspects of this. And so this is not just a minor incident. We've seen these incidents dating back, at least in my lifetime. I remember I was in high school in 2004, and we were under a shelter-in-place order in South DeKalb because of this same plant. So the idea that this is allowed to continue is unacceptable. Next, we will hear from Ifat Walker with Community Action Now, is a local group to Rockdale County and is a resident in Rockdale County, to talk about her experience living in the county from a resident perspective.
Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us here. Again, my name is Ifat Walker. I am the founder and executive director of Community Action Now. We've been in Rockdale County since 2014. I'm joined here with some residents from Rockdale County. I'm going to speak to you from the perspective of not the executive director of Community Action Now. I'm going to speak to you as a neighbor in Rockdale, as a friend in Rockdale, as a business owner, and a citizen that is directly impacted by this disaster in Rockdale County. I'm also going to speak on behalf of KIC, parent company of BioLab, since they have not found it within themselves to come forward and speak to us. KIC, the parent company of BioLab, states on their website that they are committed to building a culture of performance driven by accountability, empowerment, collaboration, agility, that enables timely, fact-based decision-making led and exceptional execution of unwavering ethics. They've lied to us. KIC, BioLab, further states, we will operate our business in a safe and compliant manner. We will make continuous progress towards our goal of no safety incidents, injuries, or environmental incidents. They further state that we are proud of our commitment to health and safety in the workplace. Again, they have lied to us. KIC, you have lied to us. We have not heard from you, nor have we heard from any of the companies under you. We cannot allow KIC to continue its irresponsible business operations in Rockdale County. We are thankful for the hard work of our first responders. However, we do not want to hear from yet another local official speaking on behalf of a private corporation that is poisoning us. That is unacceptable. We want to hear directly from Mr. Michael Sload, Chief Executive Officer of KIC, the parent company of BioLab. Mr. Sload has been leaving random notices on KIC's website, giving random updates. Most people in this room don't know that KIC owns BioLab. So who is going to KIC's website to look for updates? No one. That is unacceptable, and it is disrespectful. We call on our local government officials to stay out of the way as it relates to the responsibility of this company standing forward and speaking up on behalf of themselves. They caused this disaster. We do not want our tax dollars using our local officials to speak on behalf of this company. That is unacceptable, and it is wrong. KIC, it is time for you to leave our community.
So in other terms, KIC rocks. Just a little brevity for the day. Next, we'll hear from Gwen Smith, who's the Executive Director of CHARS, and that acronym stands for Community Health, Aligning Revitalization, Resilience, and Sustainability. They are one of the environmental groups that have been on the ground locally addressing the incident that's has taken place in Rockdale. So Gwen, if you will.
Good day. My name is Gwen Smith, and as Devin said, I'm the Executive Director of Community Health, Aligning Revitalization, Resilience, and Sustainability, and I've been working in collaboration with Chase. I'd like to have the Director of Chase to introduce herself.
Renee Kale, Citizens for a Healthy and Safe Environment. Good afternoon.
This organization's on the ground. It's important that when you're working in the community that you work with organizations that are in the area, and Chase does work on the east. Chase does work on the east side of Metro Atlanta, and so I wanted to make sure that Renee was up here with me. CHARS is an environmental health organization, and we've been paying attention to what's been going on. And I just want to give a little bit of background, some of which is building on what's already been said, but CHARS is a solution-oriented organization looking for solutions to environmental justice issues, health inequities, and other issues in communities of color and marginalized communities. According to the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazard Investigation report that was published on April 24th, 2023, September 14th, 2020, TCCA reaction, which is the chemical that mixes with water causing the chlorine reaction cloud that we saw, and decomposition occurred at BioLab Inc. facility in Conyers, Georgia. A plume of hazardous chemicals was released. And it also states that September 18th, 2020, a second decomposition involving TCAA occurred. And of course, they also had an incident in 2004. A case was filed on August 22nd, 2022, and settled on September 22nd, 2022 with the EPD. There was a CAA statute administrative formal action, and they were fined $1,000. That's the Clean Air Act. That case number is Georgia 00A000A, 013247 0009 00043. Let's move forward. There have been multiple Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, also known as RCRA violations. There were 2 Clean Air Act violations, May 10th, 2024, April 25th, 2022. 3 Clean Water Act violations by this company, March 18th, 2022, January 20th, 2022, and September 15th, 2020. And this is from EPA's ECHO, to give you a citation. There were 2 RCRA violations, one in February 19th, 2024, and also November 4th, 2019. I want to let you know that there have been repeated hazardous waste violations during the 2023, happened in 2023. They were cited in January of 2024. 5 RCRA violations for universal waste small quantity handlers. That means, and what was cited was that for that particular violations, lamp must be containers that are structurally sound, adequate to prevent breakable and compatible. Containers must remain closed and lack evidence of leakage, spillage, or damage that could cause leakage. Let us be clear and understand that it was a leak that caused this problem. 6 RCRA violations, violation 262A, and by the way, the first RCRA violation was violation 273B, universal waste small quantity handlers. The next 6 violations were 262A, generators general violation. Okay, so at least, and this says, 5 of them were for this one. At least weekly, the large quantity generator must inspect central accumulation areas. The large quantity generator must look for leaking containers and for deterioration of containers caused by corrosion. The 6th one was for label or mark hazardous waste on each LQG container. What I want to say to you, also, there was monitoring. I want to stop for a moment before I go to the next thing. I want to say thank you to our first responders. So, September 29th, 2020, that was the 3rd decomposition at this facility. Now I'm going to move on. Community Air Act violations, monitoring over a 5-year period. The last time the state went out, of course, was most recently, September 23rd. But in the 12 compliance periods during that time, there were 5 times, out of 12 quarters, 5 times they were out of compliance. Informal enforcement actions over 5 years, there were 2. Formal enforcement actions over 5 years, 1. Clean Water Act monitoring activity. The last time the state monitored was June 15th, 2023. That was the last compliance monitoring for Clean Water Act. Out of 12 quarters, there were 8 violations. Quarters with significant violations, 5. Informal enforcement actions within 5 years, 1. RCRA monitoring in 5 years, there was 1 monitoring in 5 years. The date of the last compliance monitoring was January 16th, 2024. And that spoke to those 11 monitoring violations I mentioned a minute ago. The date of the last compliance monitoring was January 16th, 2024. Out of 12 quarters, they were out of compliance twice. Informal enforcement actions, 0 in 5 years. Informal enforcement actions, 1. This is why they do not deserve an opportunity to operate in our state. That's right. Not only here in Rockdale. They don't deserve an opportunity to ever do business in our state until they can show elsewhere, because they have other facility issues, that they can be a good corporate citizen. Now, I want to just move on really quickly and say that there is the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act that came into place 1986. I said that my organization, CHARS, is solution-oriented. There is a solution. We have to learn to respond and not to react. I am calling on the governor to fund local emergency planning committees, which this act says has to exist. And do we have them? Yes, we do. What are they supposed to do? They are supposed to convene a committee that includes local community organizations, right? Rockdale has one. They're supposed to include the media. It's supposed to include the police, the fire, the hospitals, the schools. I heard from Renee that there were schools, parents that were upset because they didn't know what to do about their children and school with this incident. But if we had funded local emergency planning committees, then we would be able to meet. We would have known, because these two community organizations would have been informed of the different facilities that have chemicals in the area, that have risk management plans, meaning that they have chemicals that could be hazardous to people that live within 5 kilometers or approximately 3 miles. But that is not happening very much in the state of Georgia. And it's supposed to. And I have been told that it's a funding issue. There's not enough human capacity, I suppose, human resources or finances. And what I'm going to say is that at the state level, you need to find the money. Because if this local emergency planning committee had been meeting, then the community would have known about this facility. They would have been meeting. They would have maybe even done a walkthrough. And this might not have happened. But better than that, much better than that, if this group of people, if this local emergency planning committee with Rockdale had been meeting, then they would have already been able to know how to respond. Right. Because they would have been working with these community organizations, and they would have been talking about what the community needs are. Now, I picked up the phone and I called Rockdale Emergency Planning, and they answered. I did not identify myself, I just asked a question. Is your local emergency planning committee active? They said no, but we're meeting next week. Now, let us not assume that they're just doing that because of this accident, because their mitigation plan has been they've been working on their mitigation plan. It was already up on their website asking for comments. So it is feasible, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, that they were already planning to activate this. But across the state, local emergency planning committees are not activated. We could have resiliency hubs together. We could be collaborating to make these things happen. There's funding galore in our state for these types of things so that we are prepared for these incidents. Please, please fund Governor, please fund our local emergency planning committees as the Emergency Planning Committee Right to Know Act wanted and intended for this to be done when they put it into place, so that we would not have people die like they did in Bhopal, India, 2,000 people from a chemical incident. Thank you very much. Did you want to say anything, Renee?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am leading Citizens for a Healthy and Safe Environment. We were formed in Lithonia, Georgia, back in 2009. Currently, Citizens for a Healthy and Safe Environment, Chase, is in a court battle as we speak with a company that is sitting in the middle of an African-American community in southeast DeKalb County. We have been in battle with them since 2020. Not only that, we were in a battle with a biomass plant that wanted to come to Lithonia, Georgia, a small city, and we finally were able to have them go away. At this particular time, people in southeast DeKalb, people in Rockdale County, Georgia in particular, are terrified of the fumes that are flying around, getting into people's lungs. People have been calling me about stinging eyes, red eyes. They're not breathing properly. They don't feel well. It is sad and it is just horrifying that people have to stay in the house. People are trying to work. The company that we are in battle with at this particular time, the neighbors complain about their houses were cracking when it first came, dust, smells, diesel emissions that are destroying the lungs and the capacity of people to breathe properly. We call on Governor Kemp to please, when you sign bills into law, please sign something that will protect not only South DeKalb or Rockdale, but the citizens of Georgia. If you know people that have had lung cancer who have never smoked, the pollution and these particulate matter particles, 2.5, particulate matter 10, is so tiny you can hardly see it. It gets in our lungs and it stays there. So please, Georgia, for everyone, let's do the right thing. Industries in small communities, marginalized communities, underserved communities, rural communities, please take your companies to other areas so that you don't destroy the lives of people, innocent people. Thank you. And BioLab, goodbye.
I only have one last thing to say, and that is that talking about transparency, EPA, EPD, you guys are on the ground responding, I understand. You've talked about chlorine. We need to see the numbers for the particulate matter 2.5. They are not listed on your report. When that smoke goes up, particulate matter goes up. We know it's going to be bad, but don't not put it on the report. It is not on your report that is on your page, on your website. And please update the website and include the particulate matter 2.5 information. You have it. We'd like to see it. Thank you.
We've talked a lot about the residents. We also want to talk about the employees, because as we listed, thank you, Gwen, for listing all of these various violations, and it's outrageous that a company with this amount of violations that has not been in good standing has been able to operate. But in addition to those environmental violations, there's been dozens of OSHA violations over the years, many of them classified as serious. According to several reports, BioLab has been fined multiple times with penalties exceeding $67,000 for violations for worker exposure to hazardous chemicals and inadequate safety training. A significant fine in 2013 totaled $46,000 following 6 serious safety violations, including improper chemical safeguards and failure to provide adequate personal protective equipment, PPE. This is ridiculous. So it's not just impacting the residents, but they also don't care about their employees either. Next, we will hear from Reverend Kiana Jones with the Georgia chapter of the Sierra Club.
Good afternoon. My name is Kiana Jones Moore, and I am chapter organizer for Sierra Club Georgia chapter. I'm joined here by my colleagues Hannah Baker and Ricky LaRue. And Sierra Club stands with every statement that has been made heretofore. We want to make sure that we continue to emphasize, as the largest grassroots environmental organization in the state of Georgia, that we understand that companies like BioLab are allowed to be bad actors because of environmental racism. When it comes down to the fact that landfills are routinely placed in areas that are very much near to residential areas that are mostly black, we have to think about all of the things that we begin to breathe in, what it is that's in our water, what's in our air, the things that we're ingesting. And when you have an incident, a major incident such as this BioLab fire, issues of adverse health are exacerbated because of what we're now breathing in, the chlorine, the ammonia, and yes, particulate matter that we don't even know about. Transparency is a word that you've heard so many times during this press conference. We want to make sure that we call on our local and state legislators to be transparent in their communication, to make sure that those who are charged with regulation of BioLab are not only doing timely and proper inspection, but when BioLab is found in violation, as they have been over the years, that there's not a slap on the wrist which manifests itself in the form of a fine, because those fines get paid and we go back to a community in crisis breathing in the bad matter that is released from places like BioLab. We need to follow the example of Westlake, Louisiana, that shut down their BioLab plant last year. We need to make sure that BioLab is not allowed to inflict this type of harm on any other community. Instances like this, where there is a major event and people are confused about what to do and where to go, these are the times where we need our leadership in the form of our legislators to stand up and make sure that they lead, because that is what they have been elected to do. Hearing so many conflicting reports on Monday from those who are in so-called leadership in the state was extremely disheartening. People were told to shelter in place while simultaneously being told that most people should not be affected because there had been no advice from the EPD or EPA at that point. When people walked outside on Monday morning, the smell of chlorine was so thick that it could knock you out. the chemical haze in the air, and in particular, East Atlanta, which is not in Clayton County, not in Rockdale County, not in Conyers, not in Henry County or Newton County, but right here in the heart of the city of Atlanta. The chemical haze was so thick in East Atlanta that people's eyes burned. Yet we had a city official, we had a mayor who was telling people that everything was fine and everybody should go outside and go about their day as usual. That is not the type of leadership that we have elected to lead us. We want our legislators to make sure that Georgia is the best place to live, work, and raise your family instead of being the best place